It's about to be the 24th of March, which is the release date of Chapter 232 releasing, which is insane. This might be the end of Chainsaw Man as we know it. There's a real possibility this image comes true, and we're treated to a 15-page chapter of Denji being a homeless Yakuza slave, selling his organs, and eventually dying, with the last panel showing him dead in the shack. It really does feel like the final chapter is going to be the make or break of whether part 2 is good or not. The community already sees part 2 was worse than part 1, and my experience of reading the Control Devil arc, I felt this sense of triumph I got during the final fight that I just didn't feel between Yoru and Denji Man. You can make the argument that, Fujimoto was going for a completely different theme in part 2, but come on, I can still judge whether it was satisfactory or not. Seeing Denji or Loophole Man find a way past Makima's contract through his attacks, with Power's chainsaw, because he considered it being an act of love from Denji was cool. Using the blood Power gave him to split himself to make Pochita Man was cool. Pochita Man doesn't get the attention he deserves, in my opinion. And call me a basic bitch, or whatever, but seeing the panel of Pochita Man sitting there on the crosses as Makima and the weapon hybrids walk up to him is still up there with my favorite panels in the series. And when the Control Devil arc eventually gets animated in like 3 years, 4 years maybe, I wonder if Pochita Man will have the exact same voice as Denji, or it's going to be noticeably different to hammer in the fact that Makima never even noticed Denji to the point where she won't even notice if his voice suddenly sounds completely different. I'd say part 1 of Chainsaw Man is like a 9 out of 10 to 10 out of 10 for me. I really enjoyed part 1. I remember how sending the images of the Makima vs Denji fight to my friends, I was hyped. But to me, it really does seem like others got a way better experience reading Chainsaw Man without spoilers. Unfortunately, whatever media it is, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, JJK, Chainsaw Man, or even like non-anime, like Hotline Miami, Fight Club, Cry of Fear, whatnot, or Breaking Bad, they've all been spoiled for me ahead of time of me experiencing them. And it feels like it really dampened the experience a lot for me. Reading part 1 of Chainsaw Man was still great, I really loved the series, but videos of people describing their experiences of part 1 felt like an acid trip, like they were high. They had the time of their lives. I'd still consider CSM a 10 out of 10 manga, but spoilers and knowing Aki, Power, we're all gonna die, Makima's goal was to break Denji all along, and she, gets eaten at the end, and Kishibe gives Denji Nayata, that's gonna dampen, all that will dampen the experience. And before I go into my thoughts on part 2, I really want to talk about the Hobo with the Shotgun movie. It was a movie released in 2011, but as the title says, it's a movie with the hobo with the shotgun. I watched it a few years ago. I won't explain the movie or spoil it, but the experience of watching that movie, schlocky as it is and lowbrow, unspoiled and not knowing what was going to happen, really made me hyped. Like, I felt the impact a hell of a lot more. Like 13 to 15-year-old me really loved this film, or how old I was when I watched it. It's not the best movie I've ever seen. This doesn't mock the Reze movie. But, even if so, like I don't care. I still enjoyed it a lot, Like, knowing, even if it's a masterpiece in the Reze movie's case, knowing exactly what's going to happen will dampen the experience, unfortunately. And that's why I hold the Hobo with the Shotgun movie in just such high regard. During my read of part 2, Little D was wasted a lot. I wanted to know, for one, why she was so convinced of the Nostradamus prophecy that she was willing to go through such extreme lengths to prevent it, only for it to get worse through her actions. And this is the most powerful devil in the verse. She should have a way bigger arsenal. Makima has her chains, she has Bang, she can see through animals, she's able to go hand to hand with Pochita Man in the graveyard fight and kill him, pretty much. Yoru, the War Devil, has Bang. I'm assuming it's an alternate version. It has different rules because they look completely different. But she has the ability to turn objects, people or entire states in the weapons. I feel like the states should have been elaborated on. Can she do that with the entirety of the U.S.? In like manga, no new wars have happened since World War One, and we only like hear of quote unquote multiple wars breaking out when Yoru says that when she gets her arm cut off by Yoshida and transforms Asa's apartment into like a sword, whatever chapter that is. Maybe it was like the whole U.S. Like nuking Russia thing. Maybe that like cements all the states belonging to Yoru and thus able to be like weapified or weaponified. Like, I get it's like an allegory for the United States being a warmongering state, but what was the in-universe explanation for this? And I don't know, man. Death's power is that she can kill everyone and that everyone dies. She's also able to control those she eats and make them her pawns, which is cool. But I really feel like all the horsemen deserve a version of Bang. Makima has one for some reason. Yoru has one from the gun gauntlet. It'd be cool to see what Fami's or Deaths would do. And, reading part 2 definitely wasn't all bad. However, I did really feel like the story could use more chapters to flesh out more characters, especially Nayuta. It feels like RG333, the Chainsaw, or like not the anime skit guys, like 3 Chainsaw Man skit videos where Nayuta appears have more screen time than her manga counterpart. Nayuta appears, controls war like a dog, then sits with little D in the Falling Devil arc, gets kidnapped by public safety, given back, she walks with Denji, the hybrids fight, Nayuta dies. I honestly didn't feel anything when Nayuta died. I'm not like saying this in a badass way, but the spoilers dampening experiences is coming out here again. And it's also the fact I really just wasn't attached to her character. And I feel like the story could have used an arc to like flesh out Nayuta more, give her more screen time, or more like a connection with her, I guess I should say. I'm not gonna really just shit on part 2. I like Denji, man. I liked Asa and Yoru's dynamic in early part 2, and I guess not just early part 2. And I liked how Quan Chi, Katana Man, and most of the hybrids like Barum come back. It's a shame that like Kobeni, Kishibe couldn't return, but I get why they couldn't. Now that Chapter 232 is going to release within like 12 hours, everyone's biting their nails. They're praying there's going to be a part 3. I heard some crackpot theories that Denji's dad, who, it's just Denji and that this is a time loop and there's 2 of them. Another horrifying thought that came to me when Chapter 231 released was how is Denji supposed to pay off his debts without Pochita? In Chapter 1, the old Yakuza guy says he better have 700,000 yen ready by tomorrow or they'll chop his ass up and, he can like sell his ass, beg or whatever, to get the money. How is he getting out of this situation? I'm worried Fujimoto is cruel enough to do this to Denji, Denji's always wanted to lose his virginity. He's always wanted to fuck something, right? But Fujimoto gives his characters what they want in a twisted way. What if this, like, sadistic bastard, this agent of Satan, gives Denji sex, but it's a man fucking him in the ass so he can, like, pay off his debts and he's like a street hooker? I pray this doesn't happen, but I really can't guess what it'll be. I hope part 3, like, comes out. And I'm sorry if I sound retarded. It's late, when I'm recording this. I'm not really trying to throw in any, like, images on the screen or, like, be witty or, make, like, talk about the Goblin or Cyrax or whatever. I really just want to talk about this series I've known for years potentially ending before, the final chapter releases, of course. I still remember how me and my old friend group were all together watching Season 1 on my old-ass laptop on Discord, dude. Those were, like, good memory and peak memories to me. I was walking the halls of my CTE class, like to my public safety class, thinking about the Reze movie that I thought was coming out in like October 2023. And I was thinking, oh, I have a fucking class that's like public safety. That's just like Chainsaw Man. That's so cool. Oh my god. I really can't believe this series ends today while I'm recording. And even if it's bad, whether it's good or like a masterpiece, we had fun. The memes that came from the community were amazing. I love the jokes, stories, posts on social media, videos talking about the series, songs about the series, theories about what would happen. They were all beautiful, alright? This ride was amazing, and thank you, Tatsu Fujimoto. And thank you to the people who made up this community. I just fucking love this series, man. What can I say?